I supported my pregnant best friend for 9 months not knowing the baby was my boyfriend's. My family had orchestrated a massive cover-up. I ran away after discovering and my mother called me selfish. 15 years later they're saying I'm ruining their daughter's life. I never expected to see any of my family again after what happened 15 years ago. Back then, at 18, I thought my life was perfect. Growing up in a small town in Minnesota, I lived with my parents and 4 siblings, James, 23 male, Matt, 22 male, Delilah, 20 female, and Lily, 14 female. My best friend since childhood was Jessie, 18 female. Our mothers met at a community center when we were both infants, and we grew up more like sisters than friends. We had sleepovers every weekend, shared clothes, and knew each other's secrets. Or so I thought. Then there was Ethan, 20 male. We started dating when I was 15 and he was 17. Like Jessie, I'd known Ethan my whole life. His parents were my parents' closest friends, and our families celebrated every holiday together. They even owned neighboring lake houses where we spent every summer. Ethan and I had plans. Real plans. He was in his sophomore year at the state college, studying business to eventually take over his father's construction company. We talked about marriage after his graduation, and I was okay with being a young wife. I applied to the local community college to have something to do while he finished school, but honestly, I dreamed of having children young and creating the kind of warm family environment I grew up in. Our families completely supported our relationship. My parents treated Ethan like another son. My older sister Delilah was dating Ethan's older brother Lucas, 23 male. The connections between our families ran deep. The start of my senior year should have been exciting. College applications, senior photos, prom planning. Instead, I noticed Jessie withdrawing. She started skipping our Friday movie nights. Her eyes looked tired, and she kept declining invitations to hang out. After 2 weeks of this, I cornered her in the girls' bathroom at school. At first, she tried avoiding the topic. But I persisted. Eventually, she broke down and told me she was pregnant. When I asked about the father, she mentioned her ex-boyfriend Chris, who she'd broken up with during the summer. I remembered him vaguely. He'd moved to our school for just the previous year before his family relocated again. I promised Jessie I wouldn't tell anyone about the pregnancy or the father. I stood beside Jessie when she told her parents. They were disappointed but ultimately supportive. They asked multiple times about the father, but Jessie maintained it was her ex-boyfriend who had moved away and that she didn't want to involve him. For the next 9 months, I became Jessie's support system. I drove her to doctor's appointments, accompanied her to ultrasounds, and defended her against the inevitable high school gossip. I helped her set up the nursery in her parents' house, shopping for cribs and tiny clothes. We attended parenting classes together at the community center. We even picked out names together. She loved the name Emma for a girl. Jessie asked me to be there for the birth. I prepared for it like it was my own child coming, packed a hospital bag, read about labor coaching, practiced breathing techniques with her. Then, 2 weeks before Jessie's due date, everything fell apart. I ran into Chris, Jessie's supposed ex, at the mall. He was back in town visiting relatives. Seeing him casually shopping while Jessie was struggling through her last weeks of pregnancy made something snap inside me. I approached him, not caring that we were in the middle of a crowded food court. I confronted him about abandoning Jessie and their baby. The confusion on his face should have been my first clue. He stared at me blankly, then said he had no idea what I was talking about. According to him, they had broken up over a year ago, long before she got pregnant. I apologized for the public scene, embarrassed about my mistake. As I turned to leave, Chris called after me. His words hit like a physical blow. I should ask Ethan about the baby. At that moment, my brain simply couldn't process what he was implying. Ethan and Jessie had grown up together just like I had with both of them. They were friends, sure, but there had never been anything romantic between them. I walked away, dismissing his words as spite. That evening, I vented to my younger sister Lily about the awkward encounter. She usually had plenty to say about everything, but she grew strangely quiet. Then she mumbled something about homework and disappeared upstairs. I went downstairs to grab some ice cream. Passing by the kitchen, I heard Lily's voice. She sounded upset. My mother's response was muffled. I stopped in the hallway, not intending to eavesdrop, but what I heard next froze me in place. Lily was telling our mother about my mall encounter. Then she said the words that would change everything. She didn't want to keep hiding that Ethan was the father of Jessie's baby anymore. It wasn't fair to me, she said. I must have made a sound because both of them turned toward the doorway. My mother's face drained of color. Lily started crying. The story came out in pieces. Ethan and Jessie had gotten drunk at an end-of-summer party. One thing led to another. When Jessie discovered she was pregnant, she told Ethan. Both were terrified of telling me, so they kept it secret. Jessie eventually told her parents, who told Ethan's parents, who then told my parents, all during the first 3 months of her pregnancy. By the time Jessie was showing, everyone knew. My siblings, Ethan's siblings, all our family friends. Everyone except me. For 3 days, I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't eat. I couldn't speak. My parents came to my room with excuses. They were trying to protect me. They didn't want to ruin everyone's relationships. They thought Jessie and Ethan would tell me themselves eventually. Ethan called and texted constantly. Jessie kept showing up at our house. I refused to see either of them. On the 4th day, Ethan's mother came to our house. My mother let her into my bedroom despite my obvious state. Ethan's mom sat on the edge of my bed and told me I needed to forgive Ethan and Jessie. She said Jessie needed me now more than ever with the baby coming. I turned my face to the wall until she left. 2 weeks later, Jessie went into labor. The delivery was difficult, ending in an emergency C-section. I learned this from my sister Delilah, who immediately left for the hospital when she got the news. My brothers weren't home. I sat in the living room with my parents, feeling hollow. I asked my mother to stay with me. I needed her. She received a call from Jessie's mom, and then told me that she and dad were going to the hospital to support Jessie's family. I begged her not to go. Her response was that I shouldn't be selfish at a time like this. Then they left me alone in the house. Something inside me changed in that moment. The sadness transformed into something hotter, sharper. I went upstairs and packed a suitcase. I took my ID, my bank card with my savings from summer jobs, and some clothes. Then I sat in the living room, suddenly uncertain. My phone buzzed. A text from Delilah. Jessie had delivered a healthy baby girl. They named her Emma, the name Jessie and I had chosen together months earlier. Another text followed. My parents, Delilah, and Ethan's family were all going to our town's only bar to celebrate the birth. Without me. I don't remember much after that. I grabbed my suitcase and walked out the front door. I took a bus to the city, then bought a ticket for the first cross-country bus leaving the station. I ended up in Arizona. Those first months were hard. I found a job at a convenience store and rented a tiny room. I contacted my school back home to arrange finishing my credits. I rarely answered my family's calls, and eventually, they became less frequent. At the store, I met Clark, now 35 male. He was buying coffee during the graveyard shift I worked. He came in night after night, and we started talking. He had his own complicated family history and understood when I said I wasn't in contact with mine. We became friends, then more than friends. He introduced me to his roommates, who offered me their spare room when my lease ended. Clark helped me navigate adult life, bills, insurance, taxes, all the things I never learned at home. With his encouragement, I applied to community college, then transferred to university. We married after my graduation. Now, 15 years later, I have a husband, 2 children, and a life built entirely separate from my past. In all these years, I've had brief, occasional contact with my father and reconnected somewhat with Lily, but essentially no contact with my mother. Last month, Clark's company transferred him to a city just 3 hours from my hometown. After much discussion, we decided to visit my family. I hadn't seen most of them in 15 years. I brought my husband and children to meet my parents, siblings, nieces, and nephews. The reunion was uncomfortable but manageable until my mother started insisting I needed to meet with Ethan and Jessie. She said she wanted things to go back to the way they were before. I refused. 2 days later, Ethan's mother called me. My mother had given her my number and demanded I talk with Ethan and Jessie. According to her, my return was causing problems in their marriage. When I confronted my mother about giving out my number, she cried and called me selfish, saying she just wanted her family back together. Now she and Ethan's mother call multiple times daily. I came here looking for perspective. Did I overreact 15 years ago? Am I being selfish now? Update 1. First, thank you to everyone who commented on my original post. Reading your responses helped me realize I wasn't crazy for maintaining boundaries. A lot has happened in the 3 months since my original post. After returning home from that visit, I thought things would calm down, but they only escalated. My mother continued calling daily, sometimes hourly. Her voicemails became increasingly desperate, demanding I reconcile with Ethan and Jessie. She claimed my refusal was causing problems throughout the extended family network. One call particularly rattled me. My mother said Jessie and Ethan were having serious marriage troubles, and it was my fault for disrupting the balance by returning. She said their daughter Emma was suffering because of me. When I pointed out that I hadn't even seen or spoken to them, she said my presence in town was enough to stir up old feelings. Meanwhile, I've been rebuilding relationships with my siblings, with mixed results. My youngest sister Lily and I have grown close again. After my original post, we had several long phone conversations. She revealed that our family dynamic deteriorated after I left. My mother became obsessed with my absence, blaming everyone but especially Lily for driving me away. Lily went no contact with our parents when she was 20. She now has 2 children, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. Watching Clark interact with my niece and nephew somehow bridged the awkwardness between us. We now talk several times a week. Lily told me something that explained a lot about my mother's behavior. Apparently, after I left, the friendship between my parents and Ethan's parents became strained. Jessie's parents also distanced themselves. My mother lost her entire social circle, women she'd been friends with for over 20 years. According to Lily, she never formed new meaningful friendships. My relationship with my brothers remains cordial but distant. Both live in different states and have their own families now. They check in occasionally but don't seem interested in diving into the past. Delilah's situation is more complicated. She married Lucas, Ethan's brother, creating a permanent connection to the family that betrayed me. We managed a tense lunch when I visited, but conversation remained superficial. She mentioned that holiday gatherings have been difficult since I left, with strained relationships between all parents involved. When I asked more questions, she changed the subject. Last week, things came to a head. Clark answered a call from Ethan's mother on my phone while I was bathing our daughter. She demanded to know when I would stop punishing everyone and told Clark that he needed to talk sense into me. Clark, who rarely loses his temper, told her never to call again. That evening, Clark suggested we change our phone numbers. I hesitated, still feeling some obligation to remain accessible to my father and siblings. Then my mother called at 11 p.m., waking our son. She didn't even acknowledge him crying in the background as she launched into another speech about reconciliation. Clark took my phone and blocked both my mother's and Ethan's mother's numbers. Later that night, I received an email from Ethan. After 15 years of silence, he wrote that he never stopped thinking about me and that marrying Jessie had been the honorable thing to do but not what he truly wanted. He asked if we could meet alone to talk about what might have been. I showed Clark the email. He suggested I not respond but save it as evidence in case the harassment escalated. I took his advice. The next day, Jessie sent a friend request on Facebook. Her profile picture showed her, Ethan, and 3 children, Emma, now 15, and 2 younger children. I declined the request but found myself looking through her public photos. Emma looks exactly like Ethan. I made the mistake of mentioning this contact to my father during our weekly call. He became agitated, saying my mother was beside herself and that Ethan's parents were considering cutting ties with Lucas and Delilah over the situation. When I asked how any of this was my responsibility, he had no answer. 2 days ago, I received a package at our home address, which none of my family should have had. Inside was a handwritten letter from Jessie and a baby book. The book contained ultrasound pictures, hospital photos, and notes, all things Jessie and I had collected together during her pregnancy. My name appeared throughout, listed as godmother and auntie. I haven't opened the letter. The baby book went into our garage storage. This morning, my phone rang from an unknown number. It was Emma, Ethan and Jessie's daughter. She introduced herself and said she'd always wanted to meet her aunt. She asked if we could get coffee next time I visited my parents. I told her I needed time to think and would call her back. I haven't told Clark about Emma's call yet. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to meet her, she's innocent in all this. Another part fears it's a manipulation tactic orchestrated by Jessie or my mother. The question I'm left with is not whether I overreacted years ago, I know now that I didn't. The question is how to protect the life and family I've built while navigating these complicated renewed connections. Update 2. It's been 5 months since my last update, and the situation has evolved in ways I never anticipated. After Emma's call, I decided to meet her, but on my terms. I suggested a video chat rather than meeting in person. Clark sat beside me during the call, out of frame but present for support. Emma wasn't what I expected. Despite her physical resemblance to Ethan, her mannerisms and directness reminded me of myself at that age. She asked straightforward questions about why I left and why I never contacted her. I gave her simplified versions of the truth, appropriate for a 15-year-old. The most surprising revelation came when Emma mentioned she found my contact information through Lily, not her parents or my mother. Apparently, she and my niece had become friends at school, discovering their family connection by chance. According to Emma, her parents had rarely mentioned me over the years. This contradicted the narrative that Ethan and Jessie were desperate to reconcile. When I mentioned Ethan's email to Emma, she seemed genuinely surprised. It made me question who was really driving the reconciliation campaign. Following my chat with Emma, I called Lily to verify the story. She confirmed that Emma had approached her daughter first, curious about their similar features. Lily had given Emma my number only after checking with my niece and believing Emma's intentions were genuine. Meanwhile, my mother's behavior escalated to new levels of intrusion. She somehow obtained Clark's work email and began sending daily messages about family healing. Clark's colleagues saw these emails, creating an uncomfortable situation for him at work. I called my father, expecting him to defend my mother as usual. Instead, he sounded tired. For the first time, he asked about my version of what happened 15 years ago, the full story, not just the aftermath. I told him everything, including how abandoned I felt when he and my mother left me alone to celebrate with Jessie's family. His response changed everything. He apologized. Not a qualified apology, but a real acknowledgement of how they failed me. He admitted that maintaining the friendship with Ethan's parents became more important to my mother than my well-being. He also revealed something I never knew. My mother had actively discouraged Ethan from confessing to me about the pregnancy. She told him it would ruin all our lives and convinced Jessie's parents that keeping me in the dark was for the best. She orchestrated the cover-up from the beginning. 2 weeks after this conversation, my father called again. He had separated from my mother and moved into an apartment. He described her reaction as apocalyptic. She blamed me entirely for destroying their marriage. In the aftermath of their separation, my mother's harassment campaign against me intensified. She called my workplace. She contacted our children's school. She even reached out to our neighbors through social media. The content of these communications varied from painting me as a mentally unstable daughter who needed intervention to outright lies about Clark being abusive. We consulted a lawyer and sent a cease and desist letter. It didn't work. We changed our phone numbers. We locked down social media. We informed our children's school about the situation. Last month, I received another letter from Jessie. Unlike her first attempt, this one came through my father. He delivered it personally during a visit, saying Jessie had approached him directly, not through my mother or Ethan's parents. This time, I opened it. Jessie wrote about her guilt over betraying me, acknowledging that one night of poor decisions destroyed our lifelong friendship. She didn't ask for forgiveness or a meeting. She simply wanted me to know that she regretted her actions and the subsequent cover-up. She also confirmed what my father had told me, that my mother had been the primary advocate for keeping me in ignorance. Jessie ended the letter by saying she'd respect whatever boundaries I set and wouldn't contact me again unless I reached out first. I haven't responded. I'm not ready to, and I might never be. But reading her words did release something tight inside my chest. As for Ethan, Delilah confirmed during a recent call that he and Jessie separated temporarily earlier this year. The timing aligned with his inappropriate email to me. They've since reconciled and are in counseling. I've blocked his email address and all social media. The most unexpected development came from Delilah herself. After years of maintaining connection with both families, she admitted the toll it had taken on her marriage to Lucas. They began therapy together, establishing healthier boundaries with both sets of parents. This has brought Delilah and me closer as we navigate similar challenges from different angles. My father continues his separate life. He calls weekly, mostly to talk with his grandchildren. We've established a cautious new relationship, not the easy father-daughter bond from my childhood, but something honest. My mother, faced with legal consequences if her harassment continued, has finally stopped direct contact. Instead, she's turned to mutual acquaintances and extended family to convey messages. Each week brings a new emissary with the same request: come home, make peace, put the family back together. I don't know what the future holds for these complicated relationships. But I know my priority remains protecting the family Clark and I have built, while cautiously allowing connections that prove healthy and respectful of boundaries. Update 3. It's been a year since my last update, and I think this will be my final one as this chapter of my life finally closes. The biggest change happened 6 months ago when my mother experienced a health crisis. She collapsed at home and was hospitalized with dangerously high blood pressure. My father, despite their separation, was listed as her emergency contact and called to inform me. My brothers traveled home immediately. Delilah and Lily were already local. They all urged me to come, saying regardless of past conflicts, this might be my last chance to see our mother. After discussing it with Clark, I decided to go, alone, without my husband or children. I made it clear to everyone that this visit didn't erase boundaries, it was simply a response to a medical emergency. The hospital scene was tense. My siblings created a buffer between my mother and me, managing her expectations and protecting me from potential manipulation. The doctor explained that years of untreated anxiety and stress had contributed to her condition. She would need significant lifestyle changes and therapy to recover. When I finally entered her room, I barely recognized the small, pale woman in the bed. Gone was the forceful personality who had dominated my childhood and haunted my adult years. She looked at me without speaking for a long moment, then simply said my name. We didn't have a dramatic reconciliation. No tearful apologies or promises of changed behavior. Instead, she asked about my children. I showed her pictures on my phone. She commented on how my son has Clark's smile. The conversation remained in safe territory for the 15 minutes I stayed. As I prepared to leave, she grabbed my hand. She didn't ask me to move back home or to reconnect with Ethan and Jessie. She didn't mention the past at all. She just held on for a moment before letting go. My father later explained that the separation and subsequent health scare had finally pushed my mother into therapy. Her therapist had apparently helped her understand that her attempts to force reconciliation were driving everyone further away. The change seemed genuine, if driven by necessity rather than insight. 2 months after her hospitalization, I agreed to a carefully structured family dinner at a restaurant, neutral territory. Clark and our children came. My mother maintained appropriate boundaries, focusing on getting to know her grandchildren rather than rehashing the past. We've established a limited, controlled contact since then. Monthly video calls, always with other family members present. Holiday cards. She hasn't once mentioned Ethan or Jessie. Speaking of them, through Delilah, I learned that they've moved to Colorado for a fresh start. Emma chose to stay behind to finish high school, living with her grandparents. She and my niece remain close friends, creating an indirect connection that feels manageable. Emma and I continue our occasional video chats. She's applying to colleges now and asked for my input on her application essays. Our relationship has developed on its own terms, separate from the complicated adult dynamics. Jessie sent one more letter through my father, thanking me for establishing a connection with Emma and respecting that I hadn't responded to her previous note. She enclosed college photos of us together that I had forgotten existed. I still haven't written back, but I keep the photos. Ethan never contacted me again after that inappropriate email. According to Lucas, he began taking serious steps to address his issues after their brief separation. I wish him well from a distance. My relationship with my father has strengthened considerably. He visits us regularly, sometimes staying for a week at a time. He's become the grandfather my children deserve. When we're alone, he occasionally mentions regrets about not protecting me better when I was young. I've stopped assuring him it's fine, because it wasn't, but I've also stopped holding on to that pain so tightly. Lily and I now consider ourselves best friends again. Our children play together regularly since we live relatively close. We've created new memories to stand alongside the old ones. My brothers remain peripheral but present. They send birthday gifts and make time for video calls with my kids. It's enough. Delilah and Lucas bought a house in our neighborhood last summer. Their children and mine attend the same schools now. We're building the kind of extended family support I once thought forever lost to me, but on healthier terms. As for my mother, I don't know if we'll ever fully reconcile. The damage runs deep. But the constant anxiety of harassment has lifted. The woman who calls once a month to ask about my garden and my children's activities bears little resemblance to the one who once orchestrated family-wide deception and later launched a campaign of guilt and manipulation. Clark remarked recently that 15 years ago, I ran from a family determined to sacrifice my feelings for superficial harmony. Now, I've established boundaries that protect my well-being while allowing for connection. The difference, he said, is that I'm no longer running. I still think about that 18-year-old girl sometimes, the one who packed a suitcase and walked away from everything she knew. She made the right choice, even if the path forward was harder than she could have imagined. This journey of reconnection has taken longer than my original flight. Rebuilding always takes more time than destroying. But the foundation feels solid now, not perfect, but strong enough to build upon, one careful step at a time. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. My dad passed away and his secret diary revealed I had a sister. When I tried to build a relationship with her, our grandparents threatened to cut me off. Need advice? My dad passed away 3 months ago from a sudden heart attack. He was only 52 and it came as a complete shock to everyone. I'm his only son, 23M, and since his death, I've been trying to handle everything on my own. Last weekend, I was finally ready to go through his study and pack up his things. While sorting through his books, I found an old leather-bound diary hidden behind some medical textbooks. Initially, I wasn't sure if I should read it, it felt like invading his privacy. But I really missed him and wanted to feel close to him somehow, so I decided to read just a few pages. What I found completely turned my world upside down. The diary started from about 20 years ago. My dad wrote about how he had been having problems in his marriage with my mom because she was away for several months taking care of my grandmother, her mom, who had gotten into a serious accident. During that time, he grew close to Lori, my mom's best friend who lived nearby and would often check on him. One thing led to another and they had a brief affair. Dad wrote about how guilty he felt and how he ended things as soon as he realized what a huge mistake he was making. But then Lori found out she was pregnant. She wanted to keep the baby and didn't want to tell my mom about the affair. Dad agreed to support her financially but wanted to keep everything secret to protect our family. Lori died during childbirth. She had some complications and didn't make it. The baby, a girl named Rebecca, survived and was taken in by Lori's sister Sam. According to the diary, Dad set up a trust fund for Rebecca and had been secretly supporting her education and living expenses all these years. I had to stop reading several times because it was just too much to process. I'm an only child, or at least I thought I was. Now I suddenly had a sister I never knew about. Dad's diary entries showed how much he cared about Rebecca. He wrote about watching her grow up from a distance, attending her school events without her knowing who he was, and how proud he was of her achievements. After sitting with this information for a few days, I decided I needed to find Rebecca. Dad's diary had Sam's address, and through some social media searching, I found out Rebecca was now 19 and attending the local university. I drove by their house a few times and saw her coming home from college. The similarity to our dad was striking. She had his eyes and smile. I knew I couldn't just walk up and tell her I was her brother. That would be too shocking. So I came up with what might seem like a crazy plan. I rented the house next door to theirs when I saw it was available. I work in IT and can work remotely, so relocating wasn't an issue. I know this might sound stalkerish, but I just wanted to learn more about her before dropping this huge bomb on her life. For the first few weeks, I just observed from a distance. That's when I noticed something concerning. These 3 guys from her college would often follow her home, making inappropriate comments and clearly making her uncomfortable. At first, I thought maybe they were just classmates, but then I overheard them threatening her. They had somehow gotten hold of some private photos of her and were threatening to share them if she didn't agree to go out with one of them. Seeing my sister being harassed like this made my blood boil. I couldn't stand by and watch anymore. The next day, when those guys showed up again, I confronted them. I told them I was her brother, though I didn't specify half-brother, and that if they ever bothered her again, they'd have to deal with me and the police. They tried to act tough at first, but backed off when I showed them I had recorded their threats and had evidence of their harassment. Rebecca witnessed this whole confrontation. She was obviously confused about why a stranger was claiming to be her brother and defending her. After the guys left, I invited her over to my place. I knew this wasn't how I had planned to tell her, but the situation forced my hand. I showed her Dad's diary and explained everything. She broke down crying while reading the diary entries. Through her tears, she told me she had always known she was adopted by her aunt after her mom died, but she had never known who her father was. Sam had only told her that her father was someone who couldn't be part of her life but who cared about her and made sure she was taken care of. We spent hours talking that day. She told me about growing up feeling different from everyone else, wondering about her real family, and how she had always wished for siblings. Finding out she had a brother seemed to fill a void she had carried her whole life. After a few days of getting to know Rebecca, I decided to tell our grandfather, Dad's father, about her. I thought he had a right to know about his granddaughter, and I hoped he would welcome her into the family. His reaction completely blindsided me. He became furious, yelling about how Dad had disgraced the family name and that he would never accept a child born from an affair. I tried explaining that Rebecca was innocent in all this, that she was his granddaughter regardless of how she came into this world. But he wouldn't listen. He even threatened to cut me off financially. He helps with my student loans if I continued any relationship with her. I got really angry and told him I didn't care about his money or his outdated views about family honor. That's where things stand now. Rebecca and I have been getting closer, and she's really happy to have a brother in her life. We've been hanging out almost every day, and I've been helping her deal with college stress while she helps me cope with Dad's death. I'm trying to get my grandmother to help convince grandfather to accept Rebecca, but so far she's been very noncommittal. I know moving next door to Rebecca might seem extreme or even creepy to some people, but I really felt it was the best way to get to know her before revealing such life-changing information. And given that I was able to help her with those bullies, I feel like it was the right decision. Am I wrong for pursuing a relationship with my sister despite our grandfather's opposition? Should I have just left things alone after finding the diary? I'd really appreciate any advice on how to handle this situation, especially with our grandfather. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since my last post. First, I want to thank everyone who commented and offered support. Your messages helped me realize I wasn't wrong in wanting to know my sister. A lot has happened since then, and none of it is good. Yesterday started normally. I was working from home when my grandmother showed up unannounced at my door around noon. I was actually happy to see her because I thought she had finally decided to help convince grandfather to accept Rebecca. I couldn't have been more wrong. She sat down and started talking about how worried she was about me. I thought she meant about Dad's death, but then she dropped a bomb that changed everything. She and grandfather had known about Rebecca all along. They knew about Dad's affair with Lori and the pregnancy. Not only that, but they were the ones who forced Dad to keep it all a secret. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All these years, they had a granddaughter they never acknowledged. When I asked why they pretended not to know about Rebecca when I told them, grandmother's response made me sick. She said they were worried Rebecca would try to claim a portion of Dad's estate now that he was gone. I told her that was ridiculous because Dad had already set up a trust fund for Rebecca years ago. She didn't need or want any more money. But grandmother wasn't done. She started saying that having Rebecca in our lives would bring shame to the family. She even suggested that finding out about Dad's affair might have contributed to my mom's depression before she died of cancer when I was 15. That made me furious because Mom's depression started after her cancer diagnosis, not before. Grandmother was trying to use my mom's death to manipulate me. When I pointed this out, she changed tactics and said that Rebecca's existence would taint Mom's memory in everyone's minds. The conversation got even worse when grandmother revealed that back when Lori got pregnant, she and grandfather had offered her money to move away and never contact Dad again. Lori had refused, saying her baby deserved to know their father. After Lori died in childbirth, they tried to convince her sister Sam to move away with baby Rebecca, but she also refused. Then grandmother told me something that really showed how calculating they had been. They had agreed to Dad supporting Rebecca financially only if he signed a legal agreement never to acknowledge her publicly as his daughter. That's why there was nothing about Rebecca in his will, they had made sure of it years ago. I was struggling to process all this when grandmother made her final threat. She said if I didn't end my relationship with Rebecca, she would tell everyone in our extended family that I was betraying my mother's memory by embracing her best friend's daughter. She even implied she would spread rumors that maybe I had romantic feelings for Rebecca since we didn't grow up as siblings. That's when I lost it. I told her that she and grandfather were the real betrayers. They had denied their own granddaughter for 19 years, forced their son to live with guilt and shame, and were now trying to manipulate me with threats and lies. I told her to get out of my house and never come back. After she left, I was shaking with anger. I called Rebecca and asked her to come over. I felt she needed to know the truth about our grandparents. When she arrived and I told her everything, she was hurt but not as surprised as I expected. She revealed that her Aunt Sam had always been vague about why our father couldn't acknowledge her publicly. Apparently, Sam would sometimes mutter about those controlling people when she thought Rebecca couldn't hear. Now Rebecca knew who those people were. We spent hours talking about everything. Rebecca showed me old birthday cards she had received over the years, signed only from someone who loves you. She had kept every one of them, hoping they were from her father. Now we knew they probably were. She also told me something that broke my heart. Every year on her birthday, she would see an older couple watching her from their car parked down the street. They never approached, just watched for a while and left. She now realizes those must have been our grandparents, coming to see her but never acknowledging her. While we were talking, grandfather called. He said he wanted to meet both of us tomorrow at his house. He claimed he had thought about everything and wanted to make things right. Rebecca wants to go, she says she at least wants to hear what he has to say. I'm extremely suspicious of this sudden change of heart, especially coming right after grandmother's visit and threats. I don't trust them at all anymore, but Rebecca made a good point. She said she's spent her whole life wondering about her father's family, and now she at least wants to look our grandparents in the eye and ask why they rejected her. I agreed to go with her, but I warned her to be prepared for more disappointment. I'd really appreciate any advice about handling tomorrow's meeting. Part of me wants to tell grandfather exactly what I think of him, but I don't want to make things harder for Rebecca. She's been amazingly strong through all this, and I don't want to add to her pain. Update 2. The meeting with grandfather turned out to be a complete nightmare. When Rebecca and I arrived at his house yesterday afternoon, we immediately knew something was wrong. There were too many cars parked outside. Grandfather hadn't just invited us, he had gathered the entire extended family. As soon as we walked in, I saw all our aunts, uncles, and cousins sitting in the living room. Some faces I hadn't seen in years. Rebecca grabbed my hand nervously, and I could feel her trembling. Before I could suggest we leave, grandfather walked in and dropped his bomb. He stood in front of everyone and introduced Rebecca as the result of my son's biggest mistake. He then proceeded to tell everyone about Dad's affair with Lori, but he twisted the story to make Dad sound like he was Lori's victim. He claimed she had seduced Dad during a vulnerable time and trapped him by getting pregnant. I was already furious, but then he started talking about how I was trying to force this illegitimate child into the family. He even suggested that Rebecca was only interested in us now because she wanted Dad's money. The way he spoke about her, like she wasn't even in the room, made me very angry. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up and told everyone the truth. I revealed how grandfather and grandmother had known about Rebecca all along but chose to pretend she didn't exist. I told them about the legal agreement they forced Dad to sign, denying Rebecca her rightful place in the family. I explained how they had tried to pay Lori to disappear, and how they had been secretly watching Rebecca grow up without ever acknowledging her. The room erupted in chaos. Some family members were shocked, others started arguing. My cousin Alice started crying, saying she had played with Rebecca in school years ago and had no idea they were related. Then something unexpected happened. My Aunt Linda, Dad's younger sister, stood up. She looked pale but determined. She said she had a confession to make. She had also known about Rebecca because Dad had confided in her years ago. She couldn't bear to see her niece grow up without any family connection, so she had been secretly visiting Rebecca over the years, posing as a family friend. Rebecca gasped at this. She turned to Aunt Linda and said, "You're the lady who used to bring me books." Apparently, Aunt Linda had been visiting Rebecca's high school library where she often studied, bringing her favorite books and chatting with her. She had never revealed who she really was, but had tried to be a supportive presence in Rebecca's life. This revelation caused absolute chaos. Grandfather started shouting at Aunt Linda, calling her a traitor to the family. Grandmother, who had been quiet until then, started crying and saying everything was falling apart. Several cousins were arguing about whether Aunt Linda had done the right thing. In the middle of all this drama, I noticed Rebecca had disappeared. I found her sitting in my car, tears streaming down her face. She looked completely overwhelmed. She told me she had always dreamed of having a big family, but not like this. She suggested maybe it would be better if we stopped seeing each other, saying she didn't want to be the reason for all this family conflict. I refused to accept that. I told her that she was my sister, and I wasn't going to let anyone take her away from me again. She had done nothing wrong, all this drama was because of our grandparents' lies and manipulation. When we got home, Aunt Linda called. She apologized for not telling us sooner about her involvement. She explained that Dad had told her about Rebecca shortly after Lori died. She had wanted to acknowledge Rebecca openly, but Dad had begged her not to, fearing our grandparents would cut him off completely and he wouldn't be able to support Rebecca financially. She also revealed something else. She had years of photos of Rebecca growing up, taken during her secret visits. She offered to share them with us. Rebecca started crying again, but this time with happiness. She had very few photos from her childhood, and the thought of having more meant a lot to her. We're meeting Aunt Linda tomorrow to look at the photos. Rebecca is both excited and nervous. As for our grandparents, they've been calling nonstop, but we're not answering. Several family members have reached out, some supportive, others critical. I don't know what happens next, but I know one thing for sure, I'm done letting our grandparents control this narrative. Rebecca is my sister, and no amount of family drama is going to change that. Update 3. It's been 3 months since the dramatic family meeting that blew everything apart. A lot has changed since then. Rebecca and I have grown much closer, while our relationship with most of the family has become complicated. Aunt Linda now visits us openly, which has caused a huge rift between her and our grandparents. They haven't spoken to her since she revealed her secret connection to Rebecca. Last week, something happened that changed everything again. Rebecca and I were going through more of Dad's old papers, trying to organize everything. In an old briefcase tucked away in his closet, we found a bundle of letters from our mom to Dad, dated just weeks before her death. What we read in those letters shook us to our core. Mom had known about Rebecca all along. She had discovered the truth about Dad's affair and Rebecca's existence about a year after Lori died. But instead of confronting Dad, she had kept quiet and watched him struggle with his guilt. In her letters, she wrote about how she had forgiven him years ago and had actually wanted to reach out to Rebecca. The most heartbreaking part was learning that Mom had planned to tell me about Rebecca after I turned 18. She wrote about how she had watched Rebecca grow up from a distance, just like Dad had. She had even attended some of Rebecca's school events, standing in the back, too afraid to approach because of our grandparents' threats. Mom's cancer diagnosis changed everything. She wrote that she regretted not standing up to our grandparents sooner. She had wanted to meet Rebecca properly before she died, to tell her that she didn't blame her for anything and that she would have loved to be part of her life. But her illness progressed too quickly, and she never got the chance. Reading these letters brought both peace and immense pain. Peace knowing that Mom hadn't died feeling betrayed by Dad, but pain realizing how many opportunities for family bonding were lost because of our grandparents' interference. Rebecca cried for hours after reading the letters, saying she had always worried that Dad's wife had hated her. We shared the letters with Aunt Linda, who confirmed everything. She told us that Mom had confided in her about knowing the truth, but had sworn her to secrecy. Aunt Linda said she had always struggled with keeping so many secrets, but had done it to protect both Rebecca and our parents. Last week, Grandfather tried to reach out again. He sent a message through one of our cousins saying he wanted to make amends. But when we read his actual message, it was clear he still saw Rebecca as a problem to be managed rather than a grandchild to be loved. He offered to help Rebecca financially if we would agree to keep the whole story private and not damage the family's reputation any further. We didn't even bother responding to that. Rebecca said she'd rather have no grandparents than ones who saw her as a shameful secret to be bought off. I've never been prouder of her strength and dignity. These past months have taught us a lot about family. The people who should have protected and loved Rebecca chose to reject her, while the ones we least expected, like Aunt Linda and our mom, had loved her from afar all along. Rebecca officially moved in with me last week. It just made sense since she was always at my place anyway. Aunt Linda has become like a second mother to both of us, helping us deal with all this emotional turmoil. She's been sharing stories about Dad and Mom that we never knew, helping us understand them better. We're learning to be a family on our own terms now. It's not the family either of us imagined having, but it's real and honest, and that's what matters most. Update 4. It's been 6 months since everything started, and I felt I should give one final update. Rebecca and I have fully settled into living together. What started as a crazy plan to move next door to my unknown sister has turned into the best decision I ever made. We've created our own little family unit, and it works better than I could have imagined. The extended family has split into 2 distinct camps. Some, like Aunt Linda and a few cousins, have fully embraced Rebecca and regularly spend time with us. Others, led by our grandparents, maintain that we're disrespecting Dad's memory and destroying the family's reputation. We've learned to live with this divide. Last month, things came to a head when Grandfather had a heart attack and was hospitalized. Grandmother called us, saying he was asking for both of us. We went to the hospital, hoping maybe the health scare had changed his perspective. It hadn't. He tried to use his condition to guilt us into agreeing to his terms. He said he'd accept Rebecca if we agreed to never publicly acknowledge her as Dad's daughter and if she signed away any future claims to family assets. Rebecca didn't even let him finish speaking. She told him she didn't want his money or his conditional acceptance, and walked out. I followed her, and we haven't looked back. Some family members criticized us for being harsh, saying we should have shown more compassion given his condition. But we're done letting him manipulate us with guilt. His health scare wasn't an excuse to continue treating Rebecca like a dirty secret. The good news is that we're doing great on our own. Rebecca is excelling in college, and I got promoted at work. We've started new traditions, like Sunday dinners with Aunt Linda and movie nights with the cousins who support us. Last week, we scattered some of Dad's ashes at Lori's grave, something we felt he would have wanted. We've also made a big decision. We're moving to a different city next year. I can transfer within my company, and Rebecca has been accepted into a great university there for her graduate studies. Aunt Linda is actually planning to move too, saying she needs a fresh start away from all the family drama. The most surprising development has been finding support from Lori's side of the family. Her sister Sam, who raised Rebecca, has become close with Aunt Linda. They've been sharing stories about Lori, helping Rebecca learn more about her birth mother. It's created this beautiful blended family that none of us expected to have. Grandmother still sends occasional messages through relatives, usually about how we're breaking her heart and destroying the family. We've stopped responding. As Aunt Linda says, we're not destroying the family, we're building a new one based on love and acceptance rather than secrets and shame. To everyone who supported us through this journey, thank you. Your advice helped us stay strong when we doubted ourselves. We've learned that sometimes the best family is the one you choose, and that's okay. We're at peace with our decisions now. Rebecca has the family she always wanted, just not in the way she expected. I have a sister I never knew I needed. Sometimes the best things in life come from the hardest situations. This is the last update I'll post. We're ready to close this chapter and start our new life. For anyone going through similar family drama, stay true to yourself. Don't let others define your relationships or your worth. Real family accepts you as you are, without conditions or shame.